The House of Representatives was again in the news for interesting reasons just 2 days after the fainting episode at its NDDC hearing session. This time, it was the face-off between Representative James Faleke and Minister of Labour and Employment, Dr. Ngige. According to some published reports, the drama began when Faleke questioned the value that Dr. Ngige had brought to the All Progressives Congress to justify his position as a minister. He gave the figure won by the APC in one of the presidential elections in Ngige's local government area in Anambra State, ostensibly as too small to merit his ministerial appointment. The response he got is what got the entire country talking.
Like my junior brothers, except Faleke, they say he's up to 60, I don't know.
I'm 60 plus.
So you are near my age, but I'm at least 7 years older than you, I'm sure. I'm the same age with your mentor in Lagos, Asiwaju. And I was governor with him at the same time. He was a senator, I was a senator. I'm a two-time minister, he isn't a two-time minister.
But he won all his elections very well.
No problem about that. Just like you won your own in Kogi State very well.
Yes.
And you are now the deputy governor and governor of Kogi State.
Mr. Minister, please respond.
I'm responding, my friend. If you yab me, I yab you 10 times.
I won.
I'm a Lagos boy. I'm a Lagos boy. You are just a small boy in Lagos. Look at this boy. Mushi boy is talking to a VI boy. I live in Victoria Island. Look at Mushi boy. From Kogio. You are Oborobo. Just go. I don't get time for you. Kilo share. Who are like my junior brothers.
Now for a look at what some political analysts have labeled the photo ops of this incident, as well as its real significance. We are now being joined from Arise Abuja studio by Dr. Law Mefor, a journalist, researcher, author, and a public affairs analyst. Dr. Mefor will be talking about all the drama that have trailed the legislative probe into the finances of the Niger Delta Development Commission. Dr. Mefor, good morning, and thank you for joining us on the morning show. Good morning.
Good morning, Dr. Ruben.
Yes. Yeah,
Good
thank
morning,
you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you. Well,
thank you.
Yeah, we'd like to have your comments on the drama that we've been having at the National Assembly. I mean, with the House of Representatives, we had this first the encounter between the committee on the NDDC and Senator Godswill Akpabio, and I'm sure you know the details of that particular encounter. And then the video that we just played between Honorable James Faleke and the Minister of Labour and Productivity and Employment. What do you make of all this? Is the National Assembly now a place where, to use Dr. Ngige's expression, if you yab me, I will yab you? Is it about yabbing, to use their own phrase, or something more important for Nigeria? Is there something we're missing that we should focus on?
It's a very sobering moment for every right-thinking, concerned Nigerian. It's very sad. And we have not just what transpired between Ngige and James Faleke, and then the NDDC hearing committee. We have also that of Magu happening somewhere else. And when you bring all this together, you have every cause to worry that Nigeria is indeed progressing, but progressing in the wrong direction. We are making progress in error. That is what I mean. You know, if we go down to the basics and realize the fundamental objectives of the legislative arm of government in a democracy, in a presidential democracy particularly, you will understand that we have really derailed completely. The 3 to 4 the primary functions of the legislature, the National Assembly to be specific, is legislation, oversight, and one or two others. But oversight is the one that should be looked at critically here. You know, we are missing in the sense that what is happening in the National Assembly today, you know, simply tells us that oversight by the legislative arm of government at the center, particularly, is not going on. If it is happening, the kind of problems we are hearing emanating from these hearings wouldn't really occur, because they would have been noticed much earlier than now and nipped in the bud. The case of Ngige, particularly, is pathetic, because for me, James Faleke actually abandoned the business of the day to pursue a personal issue with the Honorable Minister of Labor, as far as I am concerned, because it was a hearing on the presidential directive on what has happened in NSITF. If that was the reason they gathered, bringing in the performance of Ngige in his election had nothing to do with it, by any stretch of imagination. But he dragged it into it. And the chairman of the hearing didn't call him to order or ruled that aspect of his question out of order. And that prompted Ngige to reply in the way and manner he did. Well, he may have really taken it a bit too far. But then what do you expect? Action and reaction, they say, is equal and opposite. We are missing big time, because what is happening in a National Assembly, it doesn't give much hope. It does not really reassure us that our democracy is growing. It's not. And if you look at the other aspect, the one that has to do with the NDDC, beginning with Godswill Akpabio, you saw his allegation, which he later recanted, that 60% of contracts of NDDC went to the National Assembly members.
He insists he never said 60% with regard to contracts.
Yes, that's it. You know, whichever. But what the issue is here is that if 60% of contracts of NDDC, goes to National Assembly, something is fundamentally wrong. I'll tell you what it is. You see, the 1999 Constitution that sets out the responsibilities of the legislators in the National Assembly made it very clear that you cannot do contract as a senator, as an honorable member. In fact, you have to even resign from your companies before assuming your position as a senator or as an honorable member. It's very important. And where the company, you are, ab initio involved in, has interest in a particular contract, you have to declare your conflict of interest. These are constitutional, provisions, extant laws, ground norm of the country. So if this is going on, it's a flagrant violation of the nation's laws. Okay. That's the truth.
Dr. Mefor, if you allow me, in all of this, what bothers you the most? What's your greatest concern? And who would you say should be blamed? Who should take responsibility for these intrigues and commotion that seem to be overshadowing the real issues of financial recklessness, mind-boggling corruption, and disregard for set-down rules and regulations?
My main concern here is the way we have allowed corruption to really fester. Stealing of government funds, that is my main concern. For me, it amounts to economic terrorism. The way government officials have taken over everything and appropriated the common resources, national resources, as personal resources. This is what you call prebendalism. Prebendalism is a situation in civil government where government officials see government resources as their own. That's precisely what has happened in the country. And it is not good for us, because the nation will never grow based on that. And more importantly, there are laws. You have financial regulations. You have, in fact, there is no aspect of what is going on in Nigeria today that does not have laws dealing with it. They are all covered by laws. So the problem is not absence of laws, it's the political will of those who are in the position to implement the laws to prevent such a thing from continuing. Those are the people who have to blame. Take the case of Mago. Mago is not supposed to be there. I was here sometime, and I told us that, look, once the National Assembly, empowered by the nation's constitution, has said no to Mago, refusing to confirm him based on a report, an advance report written by the DSS, the National Assembly ought to be respected. But the president, or let me say the presidency, kept Mago there for 5 years in acting capacity. So whatever Mago has done now, do you really blame Mago for it? Since we were in a position to stop Mago from assuming that office in the first place. And he's been there, selling national assets without recourse to any process. That's the question. Even if he says he got approval from the president, then I ask, does the president have the right, the power to order the sales of national assets? You may have to investigate this, but my considered opinion is that the president doesn't have that power. He ought to have gone through certain other procedures. At least the National Executive Council ought to be involved in it, if not the National Assembly. You don't just sell national assets, and this is what has happened. The confiscated assets were sold, cars, buildings were sold. In fact, nobody knows what has been recovered by the EFCC as we speak. Nobody knows the amount, nobody knows the properties, nobody knows from who and under what condition. I told us also at the point that Mago and EFCC under him is up to no good for the simple reason that they started with plea bargaining. You don't go through plea bargaining with this kind of thieving going on in the system. You don't do that. We needed to have shown clear examples with the people who are stealing government funds, national resources in large lumps. But we didn't do this. We allowed a single man, Mago, to deal with the corruption in the way and manner he wanted. He is a human being. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So I don't blame Mago. I blame who said he must be there, despite the position of the National Assembly, whose responsibility it is to say who should be there by way of confirmation. He wasn't confirmed. The same thing has extended to everywhere. Look at NDDC. Look at what Nune told us. Joy Nune, her testimony, even though yet to be fully verified, carried a lot of weight. And let me say, even if this is the last thing I drop here, say, Joy Nune and Akpabio cannot both be right. If Akpabio is the one that is wrong, we want to see, the full weight of the law. And if Nune is right in her allegations, in her position, she has to be rewarded by being returned to that office. That's a fact. You cannot punish her for standing against what is evil, what is wrong, what is against the procedures that she swore to uphold in her capacity as the acting managing director of NDDC. Okay. If you come to what has happened to NSITF, for which Ngige and James Faleke had their problem, it still borders on mismanagement and corruption and all that. So if you go round and round and round, the whole thing boils down to the lack of political will to deal with corruption. If you see what is happening in the war against insurgency and terrorism, it has to do with corruption. There was a general that was recently court-martialed and convicted. Why? Because over 400 million naira took a walk through him. 400 million. Do you know what that could do in procuring proper arms for our boys that are exposed to the grave danger of confronting terrorism in the country? We had so many of them want to resign now voluntarily. You can call it desertion, you can call it anything, but you cannot throw these boys in there without preparing them properly, without arming them properly. Okay. Look at the escalation.
Okay, Dr. Mefor, if you can hear me, you've raised a litany of issues. I mean, you've even expanded our scope on this conversation. You've talked about NDDC. Another one that we're hearing now is the Northeast Development Commission, that's NEDC. I mean, there are allegations here and there about over 105 billion and the likes. I just want to ask you, number one, with all of these allegations in the public space, do we need special purpose vehicles to develop regions? And secondly, what's your take on the call by the likes of Dr. Ikechukwu that said in his article this morning on the back page of this day newspaper that the NDDC should be scrapped. Special purpose vehicles in general should be scrapped. We should use other methods to be able to get effective development and service delivery to the people in those regions.
I agree. I agree with him. In fact, yesterday and the day before yesterday, I wrote on NDDC and corruption and all that. And one of my recommendations is that as at now, there is no more need for NDDC. That's a fact. It existed when we didn't have Ministry for Niger Delta. Now we have one. I don't see what the NDDC is there for. The reason is because they have not been able to discharge the primary responsibility for which the commission was set up. You see, we have two reasons for special purpose intervention in Niger Delta. One is security in Niger Delta. The other is development. Can you point to one signature development project in Niger Delta that can be traced to NDDC? You can't point to any. There is none. That's the truth. So what have they done in their existence for a decade plus? I remember that NDDC wasn't the first, of an intervention special purpose vehicle in the Niger Delta. We had UNPADEC. We had two other bodies before UNPADEC. They didn't do anything. They haven't justified their existence. So you need to pull it back into the parent system. Because in ministries, you have the PAMSEC, you have the minister, you have the Federal Executive Council, you have the president. It's easier to control things going on there. Because you need to get cooperation of these four bodies and individuals before you can really mess things up the way they have done in Niger Delta. Look at what is going on in the commission. As we have seen, that contracts are awarded for no jobs. Nune said that, look, she was to award a contract for items already in their store. These are things that are unheard of. So we're not talking about contracts, that are not well executed. We are talking about monies taken out of the system for no job done at all. It's this kind of problem that made a country like China to promulgate a law, of firing squad of those found in corruption. Nigeria has to get as stringent as that. Even if it is not a firing squad, something serious has to be done. We need to name and shame. We need to find out what has happened in EFCC. I understand that there may have been a suspension of the interim management committee of the NDDC. Well, that's a good step, but it's not enough. I also understand that the audit process is also ongoing there. That is still not enough. We need forensic audit across board. All the parastatals, all of them. We want forensic audit on NNPC. A place like NNPC that has served as a cash cow to those in power for ages, from the foundation of Nigeria. We need to know what has happened there. NPA, Maritime Authority. We need full forensic audit in all of them so that we will know those who have our money. Look, if they want to fight corruption, there is a simple formula, right? Government money comes through checks and through banks, am I right? Now, what you need to do is to identify those who are directors of the firms that have executed major contracts in Nigeria that are registered with Corporate Affairs Commission. We want to know who are the directors, who are the contractors. We want to trace those who collected the money, to what extent is the job done. even if you don't want to go too far in time, you can take at least a decade to now. It will give you a fair picture of what has happened in the country. When you do that and gather all these crooks and dump them in Kirikiri, the small fries will run away. Do you know how Singapore fights corruption? They don't go for the small thieves. They go for the big-time thieves. It is, somebody may say that, going for the small-time thief is like killing a fly with a sledgehammer. It is that, but if you really want to get result, you go for these big-time criminals. We need to go to as far as them. Now we hear that Nigeria now has an ancestor, right? An ancestor that gives us money in the person of Abacha. His loot is being traced to all over the world. Was Abacha the only person that ruled this country? You want to tell me that Abacha was the only person that looted as head of state? We want to see how far this country, who did what. And once you get this sorted out reasonably, Nigerians will believe that indeed fight against corruption is going on. And they will key in. Look, the average man on the street does not believe that fight against corruption is going on. Do you know the danger? The danger with that is that himself is waiting for his own turn. He's waiting for his turn. He believes that corruption in Nigeria is now turn by turn. That's what it is.
Dr. Mefor, we just have, a few minutes left
I can hear you.
On this program and on this conversation with you. Now, let me take you back. I've listened carefully to you, all those recommendations you have made. Yes, people have also made those recommendations. Insist on transparency and accountability, do a forensic audit. But only yesterday, the Senate was saying that the NDDC should be returned to the presidency, to the office of the Secretary General of the Federation, Secretary to the Government of the Federation, where it was previously domiciled until it was moved to the Ministry of the Niger Delta. And there are people who are saying that, look, the problem is not even about scrapping the NDDC, because the stakeholders may not buy into it. That maybe perhaps what you need to do is to even scrap the Ministry of the Niger Delta itself, because what we have seen is that people from the Niger Delta have always been in charge, either at the ministry or also at the NDDC, and yet you have this contradiction, this irony of people from the Niger Delta not protecting the development objectives of the NDDC itself. Now, the IMC, the Senate also recommends, should be disbanded, and a proper board should be put in place. What's your reaction to all of this? Because if you imagine that we should just throw away the baby with the bathwater, that may not happen, because Niger Delta stakeholders themselves may not agree.
I don't think we have to scrap the Ministry of Niger Delta. No, it's very crucial. The only thing that is very terrible here is that the ministry, has always been run by people from the area that is devastated by environmental pollution and all that, but they have not seized the moment to turn around the fortunes of their people. It's unfortunate, but that is still not enough for us to say that the ministry will have to be scrapped. I agree totally that NDDC needs to be done away with. I don't believe it has to be returned to the office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation. The reason is simple. When it was there, what did he really do? It was there, can we say that time was a golden era?
Is it not possible to reposition it? Dr. Mefor, is it not possible to reposition it?
I don't think that repositioning it, that the best way to do that is to return it to the SGF office. I don't think so. I don't really think so. And I gave my reason saying that, look, that I do not see any difference between now and when it used to be there, because it's not new. It has been at a point in the office of the SGF, and the problem has been like this. So we need to do something more, seriously more. And I think the solution will have to come at presidential level. Look, President Muhammad Buhari will have to bear his fangs. He has to really come out now smoking against corruption. He has to do something drastic about corruption. Using NDDC as an example, EFCC, and all the rest, he has to use them as example. And like I said, you punish those who must be punished, and those who are being punished now because they raised some queries like Brunei, you need to find out the veracity of her claim. If she was actually trying to be honest and prudent, she should not be punished for it, because it means that whoever finds himself or herself in her situation tomorrow will have to play along. That way, we have defeated the original aim, which is to really get rid of corruption in Nigeria.
Well, that's all we'll be able to take, I guess.
Yes.
Dr. Law Mefor, thank you for joining us on today's edition of The Morning Show. Thank you very much indeed. We'll see you some other time.